Hi, my name's Erica Lockenlala, and my court case for this presentation is Roe v. Wade. Start off with an introduction for this case. Roe v. Wade was a significant Supreme Court decision that legalized a woman's right to an abortion all across the country. It was given certain restrictions depending on the trimester of the pregnancy. This is also relevant and important in today's society because it questions the interpretation of the Constitution when it comes to the right of getting an abortion. A little summary about Roe v. Wade is that it originated in the state of Texas in 1970. It was filed by Norman McCorvey, who filed the lawsuit against Henry Wade, who was a Dallas district attorney. And you can see both of those individuals on the left. Norman McCorvey challenged the Texas abortion law after becoming pregnant and argued that it violated her rights to privacy and was unconstitutional. Overall, the federal court favored McCorvey but did not enforce it into their law. Therefore, the case made it up to the Supreme Court, which ultimately also favored Roe and legalized abortion nationwide. Roe v. Wade was first brought up in the U.S. District Court for Northern District of Texas in 1971 and reached the Supreme Court in 1972. Roe v. Wade gave women a constitutional right to an abortion. During that time, Norma McCorvey was unmarried. She struggled with poverty and had 2 children prior to filing this lawsuit. And Texas denied any abortions unless it was to save the mother's life. Some resources that I added to support my facts of the case is that no state shall deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny any person equal protection of the laws. That is the 14th Amendment. Also, the 14th Amendment has proven hugely consequential for a number of reasons, but one of the most important consequences of this amendment is the legal framework that has been used to apply the civil liberties protections laid out in the Constitution to the states. Roe v. Wade was based on civil liberties and the right to privacy under the 14th Amendment Due Process Clause. A little bit about the history of the case is that before 1973, abortions were criminalized unless it was to save the mother's life. Roe initially won in the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Texas, but Texas did not immediately change any of the law. The case was appealed and reached the U.S. Supreme Court. The state of Texas held a position where the fetus should be considered a person under the 14th Amendment, but the court ruled that the person refers to a viable being outside of the woman, not the unborn. The court recognized that a woman's decision to terminate her pregnancy lies within a zone of privacy protected by the liberty component of the 5th and 14th Amendments Due Process Clause. Some of the legal questions that were asked were whether denying abortions was a complete violation of a woman's constitutional rights, and if the law was unconstitutional upon a woman's rights to privacy since abortion was not specifically mentioned in the amendments. The courts also had to question the states on what justifiable reasonings they had to place restrictions on abortions, and the court also had to figure out ways to balance out state interests, which included the protection of the mother and the potential life of human, the individual interests of a woman's right to an abortion regarding their own bodies, and lastly, they had to question the trimester framework, which allowed states to place restrictions on abortions depending on what trimester the pregnancy is in. The decisions that were made in court were in favor of women's rights to an abortion in accordance with the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment. This established a right to privacy for women to make decisions about their own bodies, including having abortions. In recognizing a woman's right to privacy under the 14th Amendment, the court established that the fetus is not independently entitled to constitutional protection. We recognize the right of the individual, married or single, to be free from unwarranted governmental intrusions into matters so fundamentally affecting a person as the decision whether to bear or beget a child. Some cases that were used in the Supreme Court to be referenced were Griswold versus Connecticut, and this gave the right to privacy for married couples to use contraceptives. They also referenced the case Enston Todd versus Byard, which gave the right to privacy for unmarried couples to use contraceptives as well. On January 22nd, 1973, majority ruled 7-2 in favor of John Doe. Majority agreed that no state should deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. And this applies to abortion and banning abortions overall. Court Justice Rehnquist and Court Justice White ruled against Roe v. Wade, expressing that abortions is not specifically mentioned in the Constitution and should be left up to the states, not on the federal level. Justice Harry Blackmun delivered the majority opinion and stated that the right to privacy extended to the right to having an abortion, but the ruling also allowed states to place restrictions based on the trimesters of the pregnancy. This balanced out the interests of protecting the mother and protecting the possible life of the fetus. Concluding this case, the ruling legalized abortion nationwide, including states with total bans. It allowed for abortion in early trimesters with restrictions in later ones, giving women more control over their reproductive rights. Women gained access to safer healthcare options, with the decision to not have an abortion left to the individuals, not the government. Roe v. Wade remains controversial, with some who view it as a healthcare essential and right, while some may argue that it is morally wrong and violates the right of the unborn. This case was essential for women's rights to privacy under the protection of the U.S. Constitution. Thank you for listening to my presentation, and I hope you have an amazing break.